Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our fun podcast, Back2Basics. I am Moe ElHussini, and as always, I'm here with my dear friend George Elias. George, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Mo. How you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. I'm doing good. Just relaxing on this nice sunny Sunday, enjoying the weather. What about you? Anything eventful going on?
Not too much. Doing the same. Looking forward to maybe getting a little more outside.
Good. Let's dive into our fun topic. I know over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about the art and science and fun topic of interviewing. We talked about interviewing from the interviewer's point of view. We talked about it from the applicant's point of view. We had some fun discussions around things that we agreed on and some things we disagreed on. But I think we left it last time saying that we're going to dive into some interviewing tips today, some do's and don'ts. Is it okay with you if we start with that? Shall we go ahead and continue with that discussion?
Yeah. I mean, I think talking about how to prepare for the interview is where people can make the most impact. One of the things I want to talk about here, Mo, just a little bit, and I just want to, make sure that folks realize that, on some level, once you're in business, once you get through the hiring process, you're interviewing all the time, right? I mean, when you're meeting with peers, you're actually on an interview. You don't think of it that way. But how you interact with your peers, how you interact with your superiors, your subordinates, people notice this. And in a sense, if you want to get ahead in business, you should be of the mindset that every day you're walking in to an interview, people are observing you. And this is how you get ahead. You show your skills, you show that you're a good person to work with, you get results, and that's what gets you ahead. And there's analogies there on your everyday interactions at work. But even more strongly, when you meet with clients or potential clients, every one of those interactions could be viewed like an interview. The way you present yourself, what you say, the way you carry yourself means a lot to those relationships, and whether they work out into being lucrative business for you and your clients.
So, sorry about the noise a little bit. Someone was driving by outside. But do you think, George, then would it be safe to say, right? It might help if we define at that point what we mean by interviewing, which is what I was thinking about. First of all, I do agree with what you're saying. But would it be safe then to say that we're kind of like being always evaluated, always measured? Be it by internally our colleagues or externally by clients, that we're always assessed and evaluated as far as how we perform in certain situations?
Yes, and I'm not trying to muddy the waters. I mean, we have been talking about the more traditional view of interviewing, trying to go and get the job. But a lot of these tips and a lot of the dynamics that we've been discussing roll into other business situations, including client interactions. But I can even make analogies to, let's say you're doing a presentation to, some senior leadership in your company about how your program or project or how your initiative's been going. In a sense, that is like an interview as well. The way you carry yourself, and a lot of these tips that we're talking about in terms of preparation and a lot of things that we've been talking about previously roll into those situations as well. So, even if you don't see yourself on the line to saying, hey, I'm going to go into an interview today, a lot of these tips carry forward day business interactions.
Got it. So, like, in other words, some of the, to kind of sum it up to the listeners, in other words, some of the things that we're talking about today, we're going to use that initial interview as an example, but a lot of the points that we're going to talk about the listener should keep in mind that they can use those same tips to prepare for a meeting internally or externally and so on, right? So for example, let's start with this, George, and I'll give a quick example. One of the points that I know me and you talked about before was looking up and researching the company. In the same sense as what we're going to talk about now, when you're researching or investigating the company you're applying for, you can investigate, look up and research the client that you're going to go meet, right? That's kind of like what we're talking about. But let's take a step back and let's use that one as the starting point, investigating the company. What are your thoughts, George? What do you do? Or like, think about back in the day when we just graduated from college and we're looking for that first job so that we can buy our first car. What do you think? What things did you do to prep for that interview? As far as investigating and looking at the company that you're going to apply for.
So I'll just be very, very plain. I mean, to me, it's really not even that hard. But just go to that company, for instance. Read their, go and look at the about. Most of the websites will have some sort of about the company. Read the about the company. Look up things like their core values. You might want to look up just to understand them a bit better. You might even want to look for things like recent press releases that they have, news about the company.
Yeah.
These are all things that you can bring up and discuss at the interview. You might want to bring up, hey, I saw a recent press release on this. Is this something you might have worked on? Right there, it's a way of having a conversation and showing interest in the company, right? So what I'm saying here is that when you go into the interview, yes, you want to have some good things about yourself, but you need to understand about the company. Showing a genuine curiosity and knowledge about the company comes off very well in an interview or even meeting with a client.
I agree with you, and I think, I don't know if it's just me, but by habit, one of the things I always look at, or one of the things that always interests me, is looking at trying to get an idea about the company's business culture. So I always find myself gravitating first thing towards reading about me or about the company, right? About us, trying to find out a little bit about the company's values or core beliefs. And then, yes, because I remember one of the first questions that I got from one of the interviewers, and I think it was from the HR person. She asked me, what is it that made you apply to the company, or what is it that you liked about the company? And I found that the best answer I can use was by looking at their core values and what I liked about what their beliefs are and what is it that they value as a company when it comes to their employees, when it comes to their customers, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I really think being prepared to discuss about that company that you're walking into really helps you during the interview, and it breaks things up. And be ready to ask questions. If you saw something on the website that you're genuinely curious about, it's okay to ask. Hey, I'm really interested in that press release you did. Sounded like a really big deal. Is there anything else you could tell me about it, or how excited are you about that, or is that something that I might be working on? If you're genuinely interested in something, it's okay to ask during the interview. It shows that you want to be there.
I actually think it's usually, one should make it a requirement to ask about the company. I mean, to ask questions. I don't think it should be a good to have or something to think about. I think it's very important that you do ask questions. I know some interviewers, they don't take it very well if they ask you, do you have any questions for me? Like, no, I'm okay. I think I'm good. I think that you should, especially towards the end. Well, let me take a step back. Personally, I always ask throughout the interview, but at least you should make it a habit. if you realize that you haven't asked anything throughout the interview process, that you do end it with a question or two. It's one of those things that does show interest, and it shows that you are somebody that is analytical and has research or is thinking about what they're doing. And George, before you comment, I want to point something out real quick before I forget. A lot of students that I work with or alumni that just graduated, they think about this when they're asked, why did you pick us? A lot of them think, well, you're the only company that called me. Well, I've applied to 10 companies. I've been applying for the past year. And mentally, they want to, like in their mind, they're thinking, you're the only one that called me. Even if that is the case, if you have applied to 10, 15 companies, you've been applying over and over and over, and this is the only company that called you, I don't think we should use that as an answer. You're the only called me, but what you want to think about is, why did you even apply to this company? That could give you a better reason or a better response to that question. Think about what interested you in the company. Why was this out of the 100 companies that you saw? Why was this one of the companies that you chose, right? Try to be diplomatic and interesting in the answer that you use. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I agree with what you're getting at, but let me just try to come at it with a different angle. I think that you could be truthful in an answer. For instance, if somebody asked me why I originally applied to the company that I'm with now 23 years ago, I'm trying to think back of, what were those reasons? I would have said, well, you're close to where I live. It seems like you're a very good company to work for. You're very highly rated on the internet. I'm looking forward to having career growth, and there's a lot of things that you wrote on your website for that. And I also say something like, I believe that I have an opportunity to really excel here and use my skills, right? So there's a lot of ways you can explain why you applied there, other than just a very blunt answer. Well, gee, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of my point. Yeah, that you should have some finesse and some, put some effort into having, a good answer, so to speak. So I agree with you.
Oh, no, that's great. So in terms of some other things that we can think about is, in previous podcasts we discussed about open-ended questions and asking what if questions, right? So knowing that you might be asked to think about stories about yourself, just one thing you might want to do to prepare if you're going into an interview is you might actually want to think of a few cornerstone stories that can highlight some good things that you've done or things you've achieved or gone through. And I believe a lot of earlier in career folks struggle with this because they think they're being looked to answer a question in business or when I was employed, and they may say, well, I've just had some work studies, or I worked as a waiter or waitress, or I had a paper route. It's okay, right? It's okay. Think about stories that might have to do with sports teams or charity events or family situations. It's okay, and you don't have to divulge names or exact things. Tell the story. I believe in being truthful about the story, but try to have a point to it. When you tell the story and you're thinking about the story, think about things that you overcame. Maybe you had a sports injury and how you had to work in other ways to keep yourself healthy so you could have a better season the next year, right? Those sorts of struggles are things that make somebody who they are. And it doesn't have to be a business story. It can be any story that highlights your qualities.
I want to take one point that you just talked about, and I actually want to repeat it again and focus on it because it's very important. It's not most of the time it's not about the story, it's about the takeaway or the lesson learned or the meaning behind the story. So for example, if you talk about a story where you failed at something, even in sports or at a job working at Pizza Hut and McDonald's, you failed at something, showing how you took accountability for the mistake, how you owned up to the mistake, how you properly handled the error or the mistake. That's most of the time what it's really about, right? How did you handle the situation when something good happened? Did you share the success with your team? Did you not point fingers when something went wrong? On and on and on. So again, kind of like what you were saying, George, you can use many, many different types of examples. The example is, but the focus usually is on the meaning, the story behind that example.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I bring up this idea of thinking about the stories a little bit is because if you have a few fundamental stories, then when you're asked the question, oftentimes you can relate the question to a portion of the story that you already thought about. And because you've given thought to this, it's not as difficult to come up with a free-flowing conversation with these individuals, especially if you're not particularly good at pressure situations. Doing this sort of preparation and even practicing interviews with somebody, you only get better. And practice things that and practice in person if you can. Lean forward, have good eye contact. Don't do things like crossing your arms. Have good posture. These things really do matter. And we may not necessarily notice them when we're just hanging out with our friends, but in the business world, posture and the way you conduct yourself makes a huge difference. So try to practice with somebody that is in the business world and understands these things.
And you know what, George, that's a really good point, especially if you don't know how long you worry about if your answers are going to take too long or too little time. You're not too sure when they ask you about, tell me about yourself, if your answer is going to take 1 minute or 10 minutes. You should practice it out loud. You should practice with somebody. You should record it on your phone. Make use of the technology that we have available now on our iPhones or our cell phones, right? Record yourself, video record yourself, go back, look at it again. Make sure that your answers are timely. They don't take too long. They don't take too little. So rehearse. That's a very important point. And it also helps you see how you're projecting yourself, because I'm one to believe that your thoughts lead to the attitude that you're going to have, and your attitude leads to the behavior you're going to project. So the more positive you are in your thoughts, the healthier your attitude and your behavior will be. So you want to make sure that you are projecting what it is that you feel inside, right? That your energy, your positive energy, your positive vibes are reflected in your posture and your how you're going to project yourself and so on.
Sure. So Mo, I wanted to pivot onto something else, and I just want to get your take on it, because I've gone back and forth on this a little bit about the appropriate dress for an interview. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Now, the business I work in is a relatively conservative business. So if somebody came in to interview in my company, I would recommend to them a dark business dress suit, either navy blue or charcoal, white shirt, or at least a light colored shirt, conservative tie. I would recommend no cufflinks, no lapel pins, and I would, just very business dress, crisp, walk in there like that. I wouldn't go off the rails. But I could see exceptions for that. What do you think, Mo? What do you think about exceptions to those rules?
I don't like exceptions. I honestly think keeping it professional and basic is the safest thing to do. You want to be as neutral as possible. in the sense that when I go to an interview, I want to look professional. I want to look that I took the time to present myself properly. But at the same time, I want to eliminate any distractions that may distract the interviewer, meaning I don't want to wear a pink shirt if that interviewer just had an argument, a fight with his significant other in the morning and he or she was wearing pink, and that pink is going to remind him of the argument. I don't want that. I don't want to wear something that has floral designs to it, picturesque, anything on my appearance that may distract or I want to eliminate. But at the same time, I do want to come across as professional, prepared, and ready for the interview. So any distractions that may be in my outfit and my clothing that may take away the attention of the interviewer from me, I try to eliminate. Does that make sense, George?
I completely 100% agree with you. But the reason why I brought up maybe some exceptions, and just let me pull that thread just a little bit. Now, again, I find these to be dangerous, but if employed exactly correctly, can be a game changer. And let me explain to you what I mean. For instance, let's pull away from an interview a little bit, right? A little bit. I have gone to see clients, conservative clients even, and I've chosen to wear a bow tie. Conservative looking, not loud, not like a clown bow tie, a nice bow tie. And I've done it on purpose. Honestly, I've worn the bow tie with a pocket square that, it coordinates the outfit. I've done it on purpose. Why?
Yeah.
Because I want them to remember me. And sometimes when you wear a bow tie to a client, they're like, hey, that guy with a bow tie, he knew what he was talking about. I want to talk to that guy again. So I do think that done purposefully and in very good taste could work out. Could I give you like another example? Let's say you knew you were going to go interview at a software company in Silicon Valley, right, in California, and you knew they had a very visual, very casual style. I might say, hey, you know what? Maybe not wearing the tie during interview might show that you know about their culture, or going in there with a nice polo shirt might show that you're in with their culture. And if it's done purposely with lots of knowledge, it can be good. But if you're not sure, go to that conservative business dress style, dark suit, white shirt, plain tie.
I want to add on to that, and then I want to give you another example. If you do that, in addition to everything that you just said, I would point out my intention when I'm in the interview to say that I wore this. I know it's not professional, it's not whatever, but I would show my intention or the reason, explain the reasoning behind why I did it, that I'm trying to blend in, trying to show that I belong. Whatever the reason is behind why I did it, I would make sure that I mention it so they don't think it's a slip or something that I missed. And one thing I want, I'll tell you an example to show you that I do agree with what you said, exceptions. I enjoy wearing colorful socks. I'm known for it, right? Things that, especially, I don't know why, but it's just with socks, they always stick out. They're always different. They're always humorous. They have some meaning behind them. I wear that. I could wear a really nice three-piece suit, but I would wear a blue sock that has turtles on it, right? Yes, a little touch, something that makes you memorable. I agree. As long as you do know what you're doing and you play it, you balance it right, I agree that some exceptions sometimes could have a humorous, professional memory left behind it.
Yeah, again, I don't recommend it for many people, but there are certain special situations where it could give you an edge. But if you're not 100% sure about it, go conservative. Yeah. Nobody will ever blame you or think less of you for quote unquote being a little bit dressed more than what's needed. it's, believe me, being the conservative is the safe way, especially when
Yes.
you haven't walked in there before.
Yes.
So, hey, I just wanted to bring that up. Mo,
No, it's a good
how
point.
about things that you, how about things that you think about bringing on the interview with you? Any things that you would definitely bring on the interview with you?
That's when I was just going to ask you that. Let me think. Definitely a copy of my resume, which I would review and make sure I know everything that I have on it before going in. I would have a copy for myself and a couple of extra copies for the, if I'm going to interview with 4 people, just assume the worst, that they're not going to have their own copy. So bring a couple of extra copies with you. And a nice professional binder. Doesn't have to be anything expensive or fancy, but like a nice basic leather binder. Put them in it, take it with you. A pen, definitely. A notebook or some paper so I can take notes, especially if I want to ask a question or I want to make a comment while my interviewer is speaking, and I do not want to forget the question or the comment I want to make. I would just jot down a couple of words to remind me so that I can ask after he or she is done. What else? What do you think? What else, George? That's kind of like basically a suitcase or something to put my binder. Bring some business cards. What am I missing, George? What else would you bring?
Yeah, I mean, I think the business card idea is novel. If you can do something just with your personal name on it, it shows like a business thing, and it could be an interesting conversation in order to get their business card, right? You should definitely jot down or get business cards for everybody you interview with. I mean, it sounds so silly, but like the most embarrassing thing
No.
is when you go back and you realize you can't remember anybody's name because of that high pressure situation, and you're so focused on what to say, you forgot what their name was. Now who do you send that nice follow-up email to?
Yeah. But look, yes, and that's happened to me before. But let's just say worst case scenario, if that does happen, I would send an email to the HR person that set up the interview with me, and ask him or her for the names of those people. But you are right. The safe thing to do is to do what you said. Worst case scenario, contingency, emergency plan is reach out to that HR person, because you do definitely have to send out a thank you. George, would you ever bring your laptop and open it to take notes on it and then the interview?
Never. I would never ever do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Never ever. But I really do recommend taking notes and having that pad of paper and a conservative, nice pen. A Bic is fine. It doesn't have to be fancy pen. But just basic is fine. I'll tell you what I brought on my first interview. And you remember, Mo, this is way back. I worked for my father, and we had these ball bearings that we were processing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Would you believe I actually brought an example of that product? It was small. It fit in my pocket, and what I used it to demonstrate my knowledge about a product and how I can talk about it. So when they asked me about that job, I actually brought it out and I showed them. I showed it to them, mostly so I could demonstrate it. So sometimes if you can bring something, a little small something, not too big, that you can have a story about, or show them, hey, or they ask you about an event or something that you participated on your resume. If you had a picture of you doing it, pull up the picture, say, hey, let me show you what happened there, and be enthusiastic about it. Right? It shows that you can tell stories and do things. It's a little novel, but people remind you. One more thing, and I know we're running short on time, Mo, so I apologize for bringing this up. One of the things is thinking way back about one of the things I did that I got major kudos on, and actually my company told me it was one of the reasons why they hired me, believe it or not, was that I made, and this is over 20 years ago, I made a website about myself and put it on the internet, and I put the website as one of my addresses on the top of the resume. It turns out that they all thought it was so cool that I made a website about myself, and I was very purposeful about it. I put an about me, like I was my own little business. I put about me. I put some of my accomplishments on there. I put some things that I was interested in. I put my resume up there. Just very basic, professional, but things that, hey, maybe they wanted to know a little bit about me, and they saw this resume, this website on my resume. They got curious. They went. Apparently, it went viral within the company. Can you picture, these people coming out of schools have their own websites?
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, George, and it's a really good point, because in the internship course that I teach sometimes, I do encourage the students to create an e-portfolio for themselves where they have, like a video recording of exactly what you're talking about. But it's funny that you thought about it like 2-3 decades ago and we're doing it now. But yeah, no, I agree. It's a really good point. So, I mean, this is good. This is great. I can't think of anything else I want to bring up. Anything else you want to bring up to end with, George?
Listen, everybody's nervous going into, take deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, arrive 15, 20 minutes early. Don't do things where you're rushing in. Remain calm, smile, think about good things. And, honestly, the worst thing that can happen is you're not a good fit, and you're going to find another job. So, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. Relax.
And put your cell phone away. Do not look at your phone. Do not look at your wristwatch. Do not make those cardinal mistakes. Put your phone away. And one other thing I want to end with. No one will know that you're nervous unless you say, I'm nervous. There's some people when they're confident, they smile and laugh. There's some people when they're nervous, they smile and laugh. There's some people that speak loud when they're confident, and some people that speak loud when they're nervous. You guys get the idea, right? Nobody will know that you're nervous, unless of course you're like sweating like crazy and, jumping up and down and fidgeting. But if you're just talking slowly, if you're talking a little bit loud, if you're smiling a lot, it's okay. Just roll with it, keep going, enjoy the experience. You'll learn something out of it, just like George said. Worst case scenario, it's a good experience that you've learned from. All of us go to interviews, never the interviewer. Sometimes we do hear back. It's okay. Anything else, my friend?
Just one little thing. Send a nice follow-up note. Send a nice email afterwards. Thank them for, it's just business courtesy.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, George. And I think now's a good time to wrap it up.
Sounds good. Hey, Mo, great conversation as usual. And, just want to thank the audience for listening to us. So thank you all for listening to this episode of Back to Basics on the Business Edge, brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and welcome any feedback you have for us, including suggestions for future topics.
Thank you, George, and thank you to all of our listeners. I hope this comes in handy and useful to you all. And see you next time on the Back to Basics podcast.
Thank you, and see you next time.
See you, George.
Bye.
Bye-bye.